evening. Are we good to go? I'll put my outside voice on. I apologize for starting a little late. I thought it was an open house, so I thought you guys would all be mingling and that you weren't expecting me, so I apologize. So what we're going to do is first give introductions as to who everybody is, so you know who the players are. I'm Mary, I'm the mayor, and that's enough said. Ben.
I'm Ben, and I'm on the Roads Committee, and I'm also a board member of the Lake Links Association.
Randy LaFoy, City Council.
John Plankton, City Council.
Seth Bucket, Roads Committee.
Mark Foster, Roads Committee and Planning Commission.
John Anderson, Roads Committee. Tom Matthew, Roads Committee.
That's me.
Jim Waldemar, Lake Links.
So how we got here tonight was we met about a month ago, this group here, and said, we want to give you folks an opportunity to tell us what's your vision of what you want to see happen with Lake Links and Birchwood. And it runs the gamut from we're happy the way things are right now to let's do something bigger and better. The whole reason we wanted to come together was to say this is probably our only opportunity to deal with this issue. And there have been some comments about making more walkability in this town. And the question is this where we want to do it? And is this how we want to do it? So there's a number of different proposals that are out around in the room. And what we're going to ask you to do is take your information sheets and review the information on the walls and then put comments there to say, this matters to me, or this doesn't matter to me, or here's another idea, because we don't intend to have all the answers. We just wanted to have a talking point. And then what I envision maybe in another 6 weeks or 2 months is we'll probably come together and have another meeting and say, we've done some work. This is where we are now. What do you think of this before we make some decisions? Bottom line is nothing's going to happen unless we get funding from the state legislature. This is not something that we want to bear the burden of, and there is no money from the legislature this year. There's a potential for us to seek monies next year. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and you can give us a bit of an overview of what we've got going on here. Yeah? Right. So, so if you have any other questions as you're mingling, feel free to reach out to any of us or Tobin, and we'll do the best we can. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Mary. Hello, all. I'm the Washington County Chair of the Lake Links Association. Mike Brooks is in Palo Alto. He's the Ramsey County Chair. So I'm here alone, but I'm not worried. We've been working on Lake Links for about 4 years to get this done. It's a plan that was created in 2001 to have a trail around the lake, and we've made a lot of progress. We don't call it the trail, we call it the Lake Links Trail and Route, because in some places it's a trail in the woods, and some places it's just a designation of a route on city streets that are public and that are slow traffic and low quantity of traffic. And it just depends on what's available, because building a trail around a lake that's fully developed is pretty complicated. In Birchwood, our hope is that the trail will proceed from the city line with Matamidi on Hall Avenue, 600 feet to J Street, the intersection of J, Wildwood, and Hall. And we'll then go down the hill on Wildwood and Iris to Lake. We'll follow Lake around Ty Schmitz Park, up the hill, which everyone hates, back onto Wildwood, and follow Wildwood to the city line, and then be at 120 and on around the lake. I want to give you just a moment's description of what's going on around the lake. We have funding from the legislature. We've received total funding from the legislature of over $4 million for this project. That will fund whatever is done on South Shore from 120 all the way to White Bear Avenue. That will very possibly be a one-way with a trail beside it, like Lake Avenue in White Bear, but that's not really decided yet. Ramsey County owns the road and is making that decision, so we should know soon. In Matamidi, it will fund improvements from Wildwood Beach Road, the service road you may think of it as, to the city line. That's a particularly difficult space because while the right-of-way there is 100 feet wide, the dirt is only 43.5 feet wide. So the solution there is a kind of a compressed one to get people out of the traffic lanes, children, young bicyclists out of the traffic lanes. Not necessarily high-speed bikes because we have a 12-mile-an-hour limit on the trail since there will be both people and bicycles there. That's Matamidi. Those two things are funded. Engineering for the North Shore along Minnesota Highway 96 is funded and is going on right now. Within weeks, we will have preliminary engineering for the trail everywhere around the lake except for the 600 feet on Hall Avenue. We have commitments for the land that we need to build the trail almost everywhere, and commitments for some of the land that we'd like to build a really great trail in most of those places. So we're coming along, and it will get done, and it will happen. So back to Birchwood. 600 feet on Hall Avenue and the route I've described otherwise. We're mostly here to talk about the alternatives for Hall Avenue, because that's what we talked about a month ago, and when Mayor Wingfield asked me to make some drawings, which I unfortunately took to the limit. So we'll talk about that, but I'm not in a rush. If we want to talk about the route that's not on Hall Avenue, we can do that. So Hall Avenue right now has 28 feet of pavement. It has 2 traffic lanes and shoulders on both sides. At one point, they were 12-foot traffic lanes. Birchwood very cleverly shrunk them down to 10 feet with wider shoulders. The reason that's clever is it slows the traffic down. Traffic was moving too fast in Birchwood. Birchwood also cleverly put in a number of stop signs, which reduced the number of people coming through Birchwood on Cedar Hall. That number used to be, according to one of your former city council people, about 2,200 cars a day. We've had it counted since then, and with those changes, it's down to about 1,600. That's still a lot of cars, but it's much fewer than you had before. So it's Hall Avenue, and that's 600 feet that we really want to focus on because it's the one place on the route, as we think the route will wind up being, where we have those high levels of traffic. I've done traffic counts on Wildwood and on Hall Avenue at exactly the same time by parking between them and counting cars. And the traffic levels on Hall are roughly 3 times what they are on Wildwood. I saw 6 bicyclists and pedestrians in the course of 40 minutes of counting cars, and 5 of those were on Wildwood. 1 was on Hall Avenue. It tells you a little bit about where people think they should be and want to be and feel safe, and it's not on Hall Avenue. Sorry, that's embarrassing. So, for Hall Avenue, as I said, right now it's 28 feet of pavement with 2 10-foot lanes and 2 basically 4-foot shoulders. The right-of-way on Hall Avenue is not 100 feet like it is in Matamidi. That was the right-of-way of the streetcar when the streetcar came through. Somewhere along the way that got reduced in Birchwood. I don't know when or how, but the right-of-way is now 60 feet wide. Still quite wide, but not as wide as the 100. You see in the If you go down that road, you'll see that the driveways, the paved driveways, stop short of the paved road. I believe that's because that's where the right-of-way ends, but we can get closer to knowing that by looking at the county's aerial photos, which are available on the GIS system. The range of things that we could do on Hall Avenue range basically from nothing. And you need to understand that this is a project in Birchwood, and Birchwood gets to decide what it wants, whether it wants anything. We don't expect Birchwood to pay for it. We do expect to get money from the legislature to do this, as we have in other communities. But Birchwood still gets to decide. So the most basic thing to do is to say, we don't care. We'd rather leave it the way it is. We don't want to do anything. And there are undoubtedly people who feel that way. The second position is to say, as Gene Rule did at a meeting, look, we can do this with 28 feet by having a 9-foot lane marked, a 9-foot lane marked, and a 10-foot trail marked. No curbs, no nothing like that. That's better, safer than what we have because it keeps the bikes and the cars in a different place, the bikes and the kids in a different place than the cars. But it's not a complete solution. After that, there are all kinds of solutions, and they're pictured here. In general, what they have in common is a little bit of change in the width of the pavement, from 28 feet to 30 feet or 32 feet or 33 feet, roughly as much as 2.5 or possibly 3 feet on each side. What that permits is keeping the traffic lanes, having a little separation, which is desirable in trails, between the traffic lanes and where the kids and the bikes are, and typically that means a curb. It might, in this case, mean, as it probably will in Matamidi, it might mean a curb like the curbs on Lake Avenue in White Bear, which I know you've all seen. It's a slopey curb, and you can get up it and down it, and the turtles can get over it, but it still marks a different space for the cars than for the people. That can be done. It probably means a little bit more pavement on each side. I won't try to describe these. They're all described in captions on them. I will describe that one and that one over there because they are, as they are labeled, my favorite of the ideas as a solution for Hall Avenue. It's my favorite because it's minimally intrusive on Hall Avenue, but it accomplishes the things we want to do. It has a 2-foot shoulder, a 10-foot lane. You could have a 9-foot lane. That's certainly possible, but you have a lot of traffic and you're pretty comfortable, I think, with the 10-foot lanes that you have. 2-foot shoulder, 10-foot lane, 10-foot lane going the other way, and then a curb that I've described, which takes about a foot for that slopey curb, and then 2 feet of concrete and 8 feet of asphalt, which gives you a total of 10 feet of walkable, rideable surface. And that adds, as I say, 2.5 feet on each side. I have shown those to scale here based on measuring the road, measuring the obstacles, and I've shown one with the telephone pole that's by 701 Hall, and one with the fire plug that's between 705 and 707, I'm not sure, down the road a little ways, just so you get an idea of how that fits. It's pretty hard to tell what something might look like without a landmark, so I did one each of those to show the landmarks. The diagram over here was prepared from the county's GIS by picking points and then transferring them into AutoCAD program. This is that intersection. Sorry. This is the house on the northeast corner and the house on the other corner. The black lines basically show where the roadway is now, these lines, and the colored lines show those things, the traffic lanes and the trail area. And you can see how little is the incremental width of the road as compared to the current road. You may like it or not like it, but that's what that represents. Somewhere here is the aerial photo from the county with what you can see the current road, and you can see the lines where 2.5 feet more pavement than the current road would represent. So you've got choices to look at that range from doing nothing to doing a bit, not a huge amount, but a bit, and producing a more comfortable trail. We're doing this. This is not about tourism. It's not about any of those things. It's about kids. It's about kids. We looked around the lake and said, where are the most dangerous spots for kids? One of the most dangerous is Birchwood Road in Matamidi because, as you know, the shoulders are very narrow. The water is there, and if you're walking and the car's coming, there's nowhere to hide. That's a priority for us. Another priority is 96, where, as I say, we're just doing engineering. A third important priority is Delwood. That curvy road through Delwood is very scary. But the facts are, if a kid gets hit by a car, and that happens, the likelihood that that kid will be talking to you the next day is very small if the car is going faster than 25 miles an hour. And it's like 50% even at lower speeds. It's about the kids, and kids have to go, as we all do when we're going between Birchwood and Matamidi or anywhere east, we have to use that road. You saw that when the sewer people closed it a few years ago and just how disruptive it was. There's no real choice. If your children are going to Four Seasons when, pray the Lord, it opens up again, or to some program or something in Matamidi or the Matamidi schools, they're on that road. Birchwood's kids are on that road, more of Birchwood's kids than anybody else's kids. So that's the purpose. That's the thought behind this, is can we make this safer for our children, and our grandchildren in my case. Yes.
But this diagram that you have with the 2 10-foot lanes and this looking for and the other lane, how far do you intend to run that?
See-
Would it be from the frontage road?
Steve, repeat the question, because this is going to be on.
Oh, I will repeat the question. In Matamidi, the construction will be pretty similar to that. We had engineering funds granted in Matamita. I did the engineering. We don't have a contract to build that. It won't get built till next year, as it turns out now, because of contractor issues. But it will be pretty similar to what's shown there, from the service road to the city line. From the city line to Hall Avenue, which is only 600 feet, and that's the only construction we're looking at in Birchwood. It's Birchwood's to decide.
So it's just that 600 feet, and
Yeah.
then go down.
Yes.
halfway to it.
Yeah, and as I said, you can see the 600 feet on this diagram. This is Wildwood where it comes in, and this is the city line over here. So I'm sorry, I didn't repeat the question. The question was how far any of these solutions really would run in Birchwood, and it's 600 feet from the city line with Matamita to Hall Avenue. That's all.
Steve, there's a provision, we had extended that opportunity to say, do we want to go farther on Hall with the one side? So we want to hear from people how far you do want to see it go. Do you want to see it, if we did it at all, do you want to see it stop at J? Do you want to see it continue on down here to Wildwood or Cedar Street connection? So it's not, there's variables that are the whole gamut.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Mayor Wingfield. Lake Links doesn't have an interest in going beyond J Street, and we won't be able to get funding to go beyond J Street, I believe, just given the tenor of the legislature. But we can try. We can try. But it is possible that any of these solutions could go farther on Hall as far as you choose.
But Steve, you said yourself that you watched and counted, and the bikers were coming up Wildwood and heading down Birchwood Road into Matamita. They weren't coming down Hall. I live right on Hall White Pine Lane. I see bikers, but I don't see a lot of bikers. And I think it's because it is narrower, the shoulders are narrower. We've got trees running right up to the street, and it's hard to see bicyclists.
Those are the reasons that
Let me just, so we don't get into a long discussion, this meeting is for you to look at all these choices and then tell us one way or the other, because there's not a discussion to be had, but we'll be here a little bit longer than we anticipate. But if that's your point, say, yeah, this is a problem for me because of X. And really, there's no investment, I think, for anybody from Birchwood saying, this is what we want. This is an opportunity we want to hear from you. So if we could keep the conversation to that, that would be helpful.
and I'll put the mic down in just a moment so we can do exactly that. Yes?
I have a question. How many bikers do you think are going to use this during the day? Let's say during the season, or biking season. I mean, you've got maybe 5 months in Minnesota that you would care to bike. I'm curious as to how many people during that active season would be using this trail.
Yeah, how many laps around the lake? That would be an interesting.
I'm curious about that too. We don't know, but we do know that thousands of people use the roads closest to the lake every year. The Bearwater Run alone can have as many as 1,000 people running around the lake. And the bicyclists are out in large numbers in some places. Now, and where they go, to your point, is to the closest street that they can feel safe on, the closest street to the lake on which they can feel safe. Yes, sir.
Steve, I would really like to hear from the people who live on that 600 feet as to what their thoughts are.
I'll put the microphone down right now. And we're happy to hear from any of those people. Or anybody else. That's the point, I think, Mary.
I live on Hall Avenue, I've lived there for 37 years.
Here, let's use the mic. Hi, thanks. Anyway, my name is Bud Jensen. I live on Hall Avenue along. Hello.
There you go.
Along with quite a few other people that are here. And I first became aware of this maybe about a month ago or something like that. And I was surprised by the whole topic that Hall Avenue, 600 feet of Hall Avenue would be. The idea, one of the ideas expressed is to create a lane for pedestrians and bicycles on the 600 feet of Hall Avenue, nowhere else in Birchwood. And I walk a lot. I used to bike a lot. I would put in miles a year biking. And as a biker, I would never want to ride on a trail like this, 12 miles an hour. And let's say it is for the kids. It might be for other reasons, but if you're a biker and there are children on the trail that you're going to bike, you'll want to avoid that. And so one of the first things I see, bikers that are bikers won't want to use this trail, and as the lanes are squished up, there won't be any space for bikers to run an alternative. Right now, there's a pretty good alternative. We walk over to Malamita and into Attic every day along the road, and we're comfortable doing that. And safety, as we're talking about, is one of the main things, is a personal choice, and this really eliminates choice as a safety for people. They have to walk on this trail or ride on this trail. And you'd have 2 opposing lanes of bikes and 2 opposing lanes of pedestrians. And I personally believe that's very unsafe. It also abuses, I believe, the property rights that we that live on Hall Avenue. I got a federal express to it yesterday where we just pulled up in front of the driveway and dropped off what was coming. But there will be a lot of interruptions to some smooth flowing of traffic, of pedestrian traffic, of vehicle traffic, and of bicycle traffic. So I'm very much against the idea because there's no need, because I think it's an unsafe enterprise to provide this illusion of safety for 600 feet of Birchwood Village on Hall Avenue. And it's also very inconvenient for those of us that live there. And there might be other people that, you were asking about someone that lived on Hall Avenue. I'm one of them, but there's many others.
Hi, I'm Joe Miller. We also live on Hall Avenue, just down from Bud. And we really don't know a whole lot about what's going on here, but it was kind of a surprise. But that this was all in the works and sounded like it was, moving along pretty fast. So that kind of concerned us. I agree with what Bud said. The trail. I mean, I was out the other day on the Gateway Trail and the trail in front of Matamidi there. Those 2 trails are a little bit different width. You can see how the people respond when they're using the trails. It's kind of differently. People, when they're out in groups, tend to expand across the trail. People are going different speeds. They're not aware of who's behind them, often not aware of who's even coming the other direction. People walking dogs, let the dogs go on the leash completely across the trail, blocking it entirely, not aware people are coming up from the back. I think the trail isn't. I think separating things like this isn't going to solve a problem. I think we got a method to get through town that's been working for decades as it is right now, and I'm not really interested in seeing any changes at this point. I think it works well. One thing that came up during the discussion here, I was just making a note for walking. In the winter, let's just say they are plowing the roads and kids are trying to get the school buses walking up and down the road. Are you going to be plowing the snow up onto the trail so that that's not walkable, and then have a narrower driving area too, so the kids will be forced out into the roads even more in the winter when they're walking to the buses? So those are just some of the things that I'd been thinking of. I'm kind of looking at some notes I have here. Another thing is it's going to kind of change the character of the city. The city's kind of almost like a older, rustic, almost like living in a park. But if we start putting curbs and trails like this, it's going to be more like a more modern city, like a Woodbury or something like that. And that, I think, changes the whole character. So those are just a couple of things that would concern me.
Mike Evangelist. I live in Wildwood. I just have a question about the interface at where it turns down towards Wildwood. Is it going to be anything on Wildwood, signage, marking, anything like that, or is it just turn here and that's the end of it?
Turns onto Wildwood Avenue.
Yeah.
There will undoubtedly be a radius to get people around that corner
So no lane markings or anything like that.
There'll probably be markings, but there won't be any significant construction. There might be enough construction to widen that radius or change the radius for you, but no significant construction.
Okay.
We don't have all the facts, no matter which plan we're talking about, but that brings up a really good point, is that if the trail were shifted to the north side of the road, then if we do nothing to Hall Avenue, then we've got people using both sides of the road again. So the question is, how do we deal with that interface? If we leave it as is, and the trail is on the north side of the road in Montemita, how do they deal with that interface? And no matter what, there are issues that are very complicated, and I don't know if we have all the right answers yet. I think we're looking for some input on that specifically as well.
Thanks.
I'm going to recommend, unless there's any other questions like that, we really want to hear your opinions, because this is, as much as I know Joe and others have said, well, this is happening fast, this is really our first opportunity to even say, we haven't been involved in this either. There was nothing for us to do. There was nothing, there was no action taken by us, and so please come forward, meet with us, look around here, fill out your sheets, and give us your opinions. Okay?
The roads committee's been talking about it for a while.
Yeah, but we haven't had
Back and forth.
any information out. So, does this sound good?
Sure, others?
Okay.
Who should we hear from?
Let me ask what the roads committee is recommending or looking at. What does the roads committee think is important here? Do we have traffic calming devices in place? Are there other approaches that should be used or could be used? What about the safety issues? Are these recommended widths proper for safety of all the pedestrians and the cars? And yeah, I guess snow plowing. I mean, I don't know what you do about snow in that area. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Ben is here from
Yeah.
the roads committee, and Ben has taken the lead from Jean tonight. Jean couldn't be here.
I would just say that as a roads committee, we've talked about it, we've discussed it, you know, we've reduced the lanes, and right now it's still, as a citizen that uses the roads as a biker and as with a walker with two little kids, it's still not safe. I mean, I still can't get my stroller fully out of the fog lane when I'm walking with them, so I feel like some change would be great. We have discussed it. We've approved this initial signage. Was that last year or 2 years ago? So the signs have been up for a while. We've been kind of talking about it, but since we don't have any money, we haven't really decided on a design yet. So this is just, we've always said, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. We'll kind of go with this, but let's see kind of what we want to do as a Birchwood. You know, it's not the 5 or 6 of us to decide what's going to happen, especially when there's property owners and a lot of stakes. So does that help?
So you haven't looked that deeply?
Not really.
Okay. All right. I was just curious.
Yeah.
So she was first.
On Lake Avenue in White Bear, they also have a raised curb that I use quite a bit to bike around the lake, and I found the curb really nice because when there's a group walking, you can get off and go around them. But maybe finding out what they do in the wintertime as far as snow removal might be a good idea, because we certainly wouldn't want to push our kids into the street more. And they must do something because that trail is used year-round.
Right. And
Just
I think the snow removal is something every year we kind of go through and work with Birch, which I know some people have issues with them, but we go through and we say these are all the spots, these are the roads we want, this is the order that we would like everything to be plowed. So it would be another line that says, you know, after all the vehicle roads are done, bring something through and kind of clear that off.
Yeah.
So the plowing would be another line in the contract.
Okay.
I guess my question is similar in that I wonder about these curbs. It seems to me that they're an accident waiting to happen. If you've got a rider who's not terribly experienced or a kid who's new on a bike and suddenly you get this curb change for you. I know one of my best friends broke her shoulder hitting the curb over in White Bear when they did that because it was a sudden thing she got mixed up in, and she'd been riding for years. And I was wondering if you'd taken a look at the safety of those curbs, in that they're a sudden change, something to run into.
I guess we haven't researched how high and everything, but there's inherent risks in kind of everything. So we just kind of think that having a curb would be safer for the majority, and if there could be a potential could fall on your bike anywhere. So I guess we haven't totally looked at it. Yeah.
So I would like to look at how the bike and pedestrian pathway on the north end of the lake has worked out. It's got the curve that you go up and down, and we use that all the time. How wide is the walkway? Is that 10 feet wide? 10 feet wide. So how have the people?
It's 12 feet wide, and this would be 8 to 10. So there's your difference.
Okay.
The asphalt is 10 feet, and there's a 2-foot clear zone in some places. In some places, at least, there is a total.
I measured it 2 nights ago.
So looking at what they've done there, how would that work here? And I think even when I ride my bike up there, I still struggle with pedestrians, sometimes they go on the road, sometimes they go on the walkway. And I just want it to be safe for our kids, our grandkids. I think improving our roads to make way for bicycles is important. So, and if they're doing it around the lake, in Birchwood, it would be helpful to have a good, safe place here for bikes and pedestrians.
I actually just had something, minor to say. I could be interpreting this wrong, but my interpretation of this situation was that one of the co-founders, Gene Rulli, got wind that this path and things of this nature were going to be coming our way. And it sounded like the different cities around the lake were maybe kind of imposing, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. And it seemed like Gene wanted to champion for the city and say, no, let's work with the city and figure out how to do this appropriately and really find a way for us to benefit. So really, I want to say a big thanks to Gene, who isn't here right now, but he really is the big advocate for the city. And the reason why we really want to talk to everybody is to get the ideas to hopefully make this as beneficial for the community as possible, and certainly not a deterrent or an unnecessary update. I think the biggest thing that I'm going to take away for tonight is certainly the safety aspects and doing as much research as we can to identify not only the safety but the maintenance and what this is going to look like in the winter. Because I agree, that is space off the road, and we need to figure out how not to limit the lanes when it's already a limited resource with parking as it is. But I just wanted to put in my little 2 cents as kind of someone behind the scenes.
Hi, John Anderson on the Roads Committee. I've heard a lot of, Mary made a good point that there's a lot of stuff that's not thought out here. And one of the things as a committee, in some of the information that you've got, it shows some of the concerns that we've had, and they're not all there, and everybody doesn't agree on everything. But while you're talking about this, I hear some of the questions about some of the concerns that we have, and so I just thought I'm going to throw some of the things out here that we're concerned about and let you think about those while you're looking at these and thinking about how this might work. Okay, the change in volume of bikes is really unknown. The change that this would make to traffic is really unknown. Every one of these plans is a little bit different, and we're just starting to look at this stuff. Okay, there's stuff that we brought up, like school bus pickup and drop off. What do you do if one side of the road is closed off with a bike path? Mail carrier, mail delivery, garbage recycling. Something about a ramp type elevated concrete curb. If anybody's ever ridden a motorcycle, John, I know you have, you go over a ramp and you might end up on your side. So, and we're going to have cars passing each other up on that bike lane. So that's something to consider if we go with an elevated bike lane. Okay? Well, the way some of this is set up is there would be a single traffic lane and a single bike lane, and the cars coming toward each other would be like north and south going Zacks, and they would have to wait until the bike lane was clear and then maneuver around each other. Some of these plans call for 2 traffic lanes and a path. So there's different stuff. Parking along the route, if anybody lives on Hall or, you know, down along Wildwood, and you park in the street occasionally, that could affect you. One of the big things for the roads committee is maintenance costs. Even if there's a grant that pays for these modifications, once they're done, who pays for the upkeep? You know, a concrete curb, these talk about an 18 to 24 inch concrete widening strip, and that would maybe cause some issues with our crack sealing when we do that every year to maintain the roads. You know, who gets a right of way? Bikers, I suppose, on the bike path, and we're still not quite sure how bikes and pedestrians would share the trails safely. So there's an awful lot of stuff that is involved in this, and we've just kind of started. And I don't want to sound like devil's advocate or anything, but there's an awful lot to it. There really is. So, we'll be around here. Ask us questions. You know, we just try and maintain the roads, and we work for you all. So, okay.
Larry Mahoney, Lake Avenue. A lot of questions, not a lot of answers, but I've got another question. There is if there's any opportunity to request state funding for another little area here, you got that curve down from Hall Avenue towards Wildwood, and there's a sharp blind corner that it's a hazard right now. It's a hazard whether there's 2 cars. It's a hazard whether there's people walking their dogs that are taking up a whole car lane. If there's any way that that could be widened or even put up a mirror so that people could, you know, see. It's a very dangerous intersection right now. So.
As a roads committee member, I can address that and just say that that's one of the things we do. Our meetings are open to anybody. Bring your ideas. You can email us. Our email addresses and phone numbers are on the city website. And if you have a specific, you know, just tell us this intersection. Here's where it is, the location. Here's where the problem is. If you want to bring it to a meeting, and otherwise email it with a diagram, and we'll certainly go over it and consider.
I understand that, but I was also looking for state funding for you.
Oh, okay. I tried to get wheelage tax funding from the county, and they laughed at me.
If I could respond to just that comment, frankly, we hadn't thought about that. It's a good thought. You may be aware that the Lake Links Association, through its own fundraising, has donated $1,000 to Birchwood for preliminary engineering. That would be a pretty good question to ask an engineer, a registered civil engineer, and whether that some improvement there ought to be made. Good thought.
Hi, Chris Cray. I live at White Pine Lane. I should acknowledge also that I am involved in the Lake Links Committee. We became involved a few years ago, found it on social media after an incident where I was actually pushing my stroller down the road and had to veer off into the ditch just to avoid being hit by a car. So that sort of sparked this interest for us, and we found social media, or through social media, we found Lake Links, and I think they've done fantastic work. So I just, since that incident and since that time, I see the need to make that road safer. I use it every day, sometimes multiple times a day, pushing a stroller, running, walking, biking with the kids. And I do see a need to make it safe for our kids so that the folks who live on the White Pine Lane and the cul-de-sacs back there have access, have a way to get kids, for example, who are on bikes with training wheels or strollers down to the lake or to the farmer's market in Matamidi. We use that road often, and I would like to see something to make it safer. So, thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead, no, you're good.
So I guess now as you can get up and walk around, let me just explain what I've posted up, and then let Steve explain what he's put up as well. So the 3 posters that you see underneath the TV over here are the 3 options that the City Council and Roads Committee reviewed at their May 6th meeting with the Lake Links Association. So those 3 have already been reviewed. There's additional sketches that I've put over here on these desks over here that have been provided by the Lake Links Association as additional options to review. So please look at all of them. There's a handout on the desk, instructions.
More handouts there, so there's quite a few. Feel free to.
Yeah, there's plenty of material over there to review. The yellowish looking one is the instructions. It explains the 3 options that were reviewed on May 6th, and points you to the corresponding sketches for each options that they considered. And then come over and look at the other options, and then if you have additional options that you'd like everyone to consider, there's space on the back side for you to fill out or draw, and then please turn them into the inbox in the back.
Tobin, we're going to move these away so that not everybody has to queue up in front of them. So aside from that, let us know what you think. That's kind of the whole point tonight.
Can I add one more thing? And I know our committee, the Roads Committee, was formed about 5 years ago. And one of our primary functions, the reason we were formed, was to try and reduce speed limits and get control of the maintenance costs of keeping our roads in better repair. We've tried to reduce the maintenance costs, and the roads are in a little bit better shape, I think, and that's all good. One of the things we have on Hall Avenue, Cedar Street, is we have a whole lot of traffic that used to be County Road 29. It's a shortcut from here to there and there back. And with all that traffic, the more traffic you have on a road, the more it costs to maintain it. One thing that this trail will do when they get this put through on across from Matamidi to our border, it's gonna really reduce traffic going through here. So I will say, I have no idea what it's gonna do. My guess, if I had to guess, I'd say 25%. Depending on the curbs, though, it might reduce all the bike traffic. I don't know. So that's a point.
Why would it reduce traffic?
Well, if they go with a single lane down there and a bike lane.
We haven't proposed a single lane.
John,
it's going to make it.
It's not a single lane.
We haven't proposed
a single lane?
There's no proposals are single lane.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well.
But the presence of things like trails has been shown to reduce traffic because people see it as somewhere not to go. The other thing we've talked about, and this is true in White Bear. Thank you. Another thing we've talked about, which is done over in White Bear at the Birch Lake Road on the west of 4th Street, that's 2 10-foot lanes and a trail next to it with a conventional curb, which is more hazardous if you hit it with your bike than a slope curb, which we're talking about. But the other thing they've done on that road is imposed a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which they might not be able to enforce, and they've banned trucks, which communities have the right to do. Now, that doesn't mean that Amazon can't get to you, or the school bus can't get to you, or you can't move in and out of your house because the moving van can't. What it means is through trucks. It means the beer distributor who's calling on Kazi's down here and then going to White Bear goes around instead of down Hall and Cedar. So it tends not only to reduce the number of cars, but the size of the vehicles, which again is a consideration for maintenance. In terms of maintenance, adding 5 feet to Hall Avenue would add 3,000 square feet, which is something less than 1% of the pavement that you already have in Birchwood. So I didn't mean to get back on the... Walk around, have a look. I'll be here to talk to you if you have questions.
There you go. Go second that.